What's up? It's Way Up with Angela Yee. I'm here. My girl Stacey Tisdale is here. She's my partner in Wealth Wednesday. And we have a true unicorn.
Unbelievable. We are so excited to have Fawn Weaver here. And Fawn is one of only 5 African-American women in the United States to lead a $1 billion plus company in the United States. That's amazing. I'm so excited for everyone to learn the story because it's a story.
Yeah, and to lead one that I own.
One that she owns.
So
One
we
that she
do
owns.
lead a few.
Yeah.
But to found
lead
it,
one
own
that
it,
she
lead
owns,
it.
yep.
There's only 5 of us.
Uncle Nearest.
And
is in the
I want to
building.
say, I remember when you first bought Uncle Nearest.
Yeah.
And we're bringing this story to the masses and telling the story about Jack Daniels, a relationship to Uncle Nearest, and how Uncle Nearest is the person who actually taught them how to make the whiskey.
Yeah.
Tell our audience why Jack Daniels could arguably be called Uncle Nearest.
Well, you know, it's so cool because right now we just released a new bottle called Nearest Greene Tennessee Whiskey. And one of the things that we're doing when we released it is called Nearest Greene versus Everybody Part 2. And the reason it's Part 2 is when Jack was alive, it's one of the most brilliant marketing things I've seen, is he had to figure out how do I get people to drink Tennessee whiskey coming out of Lynchburg, Tennessee, when Kentucky is putting out all this bourbon, when there's 1,000 Tennessee distilleries. How do I do it? So he would show up at bars, at saloons is what they were called then, but he'd show up at bars with a silver dollar, which was a really big deal back then. Yeah. And he would put a silver dollar on the counter with the consumer there, and he would tell them, try mine versus whoever you were already going to buy. And he would put that silver dollar on the line. And so we called the U.S. Treasury and bought a whole lot of silver dollars. So when we released Nearest Greene Tennessee Whiskey, our whole team, silver dollars going out and doing blind taste tests. Whoever you're drinking, put this up against it. And when you think about it, it's a $30 bottle, $29.99. And the very first takedown we did was Blanton's. Blind taste test at a Mexican restaurant of all places.
Wow, you had some heavy competition.
And so, but the reason why it's Nearest Greene versus Everybody is when Jack was taking Jack Daniels out at that time, the whiskey in those bottles was Nearest Greene's.
Right.
And so even then he was putting up Nearest Greene's whiskey against everybody in the marketplace.
And he did give credit.
Yes, always.
To Nearest. And I just want to make sure we're clear about that
yes,
too, because you always are very. It was really that another person bought what is it, a distillery?
Yeah, another person bought the brand.
The brand, okay.
But when Jack Daniel and his family ran the distillery until the very last one passed away in 1978, Nearest Greene and his boys, they were talked about so much on the tour that Nearest's descendants would come back from college with their college friends to brag on their ancestor because he was so integrated into their story. And then after Regger died, Jack's descendant Regger died in 1978, the story disappeared between 1978 and the time that one of Nearest's descendants went to work there in 1979. In that 1 year, the story literally, it was disappeared and it was replaced by a story of a white preacher and distiller who both Jack and Nearest worked for. That person in the official story became the teacher versus what the story always had been, which was Nearest was the teacher and the mentor.
Wild.
And now we know he was not only the first master distiller for Jack Daniel Distillery, but he's the only known master distiller for Jack Daniel Distillery No. 7. So everybody out there drinking Old No. 7, that is paying homage to the distillery in which Nearest Greene is the only known master distiller.
So we've talked around the story.
Yeah.
Give our audience just a quick 411 on exactly what happened, and especially that photograph.
Absolutely. So Nearest Greene is the first known African-American master distiller, the teacher, mentor of Jack Daniel, the first master distiller for Jack Daniel Distillery. And the entire time that Jack was alive, which I'm so happy, Angela, you pointed this out, because a lot of people still don't know that Jack and his descendants always made sure not only did they give Nearest credit and Nearest's boys credit and grandkids credit, but they also made sure that we knew the difference between Kentucky bourbon and Tennessee whiskey. They're both straight bourbon whiskeys. The difference between the two is the process that came in with the West Africans, the Lincoln County process, taking traditional bourbon distillate, running it through sugar maple charcoal before it goes into the barrel to remove the impurities. That's why Uncle Nearest doesn't give you a headache. Like, you drink that neat, you could drink it neat all night. I do it all the time. And it does not give you, it doesn't give you a headache, and it won't make you tipsy because we're pulling out those impurities.
Now, since this is Wealth Wednesday, I also want to talk about you, Fawn Weaver, as an individual and your background, because this was not something that you even had intended to do, right? And
at all.
At all.
Yeah.
And this wasn't even something, spirits was not something that you had a background in, but you became extremely passionate about it when you went to go do this deal.
Yeah.
So can you just give us a little of that story, because I think it's really important for people to understand that you can feel such a strong passion for something and actually educate yourself the way that you did and what that process was like, because I'm sure there's people listening who have something they really want to do but feel like, well, this isn't what I do, this isn't my background, so let me figure out something else.
Well, we have this, and I don't know if there was a book that came out that told people they needed mentors and allies to get ahead. I have no idea where this came from, but my DMs are filled every day with people asking me to be a mentor.
Right.
You don't need a mentor. I literally never had a mentor.
Me neither.
Let ChatGPT be your mentor.
Exactly.
Literally, you throw in best assistant ever.
And we didn't have that.
We didn't have that. We had to go to the library. So I tell people, when I was learning how to write business plans, Google didn't exist. I had to go to the library. Now you have templates. All you got to do is do the work, fill it in. And so we now have everything at our fingertips to succeed. There are no excuses at this point,
right?
Except for the ones that we create. And if you say, well, I come from an area where education isn't great. I dropped out of high school at 15. So let's not have a conversation about, and by the way, John Muir High School in Pasadena, California, it's not at the top. Let's just say that, right? And so even I dropped out of high school so early. The last grade I completed was the 10th grade. But I studied myself. We have to get to a place where we stop looking for people to lead us. And when it comes to this story, when I came into it, I remember sitting down with, now he's the chairman of Brown-Forman, who owns Jack Daniels. And this was long after Uncle Nearest came out, and we sat down, and I remember, and I like this guy a lot, so this isn't a negative thing, but we sat down and he said, listen, Fawn, I just didn't believe you could pull this off. Like, that was the first thing he said when he met me. And then we began talking about the whiskey business. He's like, well, wait. I thought you did marketing. You're talking about the whiskey making process. And he said, I don't even know the science of the whiskey making process. Now, mind you, he's like 5th generation in this business. He was running one of the top bourbon companies, and he left that to his scientists and his engineers and his distillers. And I was like,
that's where the magic is.
He was the businessman, but he wasn't the person that actually could do the business.
Right. But here's the thing is we now have access, fingertips, like literally to figure out, pick an industry, any industry. We can master it. And it's why I love AI. I know there's some dangers to it, but I believe it to be the great equalizer for women and people of color. Because now standardized tests don't matter.
Right.
Because we know how to answer the way that the tests expect, because we can just toss it in to ChatGPT, or I don't know, whoever else ever. I use that. I've been an early adopter of it. And I'm not sponsored by them. I'm just saying that's what I like.
It's like saying Google.
Exactly. But now the reason why I love it and I embrace it is because what I did to learn the whiskey business, to learn the marketing behind what Jack did. A lot of the marketing you see with Uncle Nearest now is stuff Jack did in the 19th century. And I'm like, that still works. And bringing things back, because what Jack was doing was marketing Nearest's product. What I'm doing is marketing Nearest's product. So a lot of what I do just pulls back from the marketing from when Jack was alive and when Nearest was alive.
Let's talk about you for a minute.
Yeah.
Because this is interesting. When you were 15 years old, your parents told you to shape up or ship out.
And I shipped out.
You shipped
real
out
fast.
15 years
real
old.
Fast. Yeah.
And one of the places where you stayed was Covenant House.
Yeah, I love it. That was the last. So I moved to Jordan Downs. I moved to Watts, and that's where I began my journey on my own. And if you ever wanted to build some thick skin, move to the projects at 15. And I went from there. By the time I got to Covenant House, that was my 3rd homeless shelter. So it was Jordan Downs to the first one, homeless shelter, to the second homeless shelter. My last homeless shelter was Covenant House.
I've done workshops at Covenant House.
I love them.
And I know that a requirement is either go to school or get a job.
Yes.
And I was reading how kids would be like, oh, I can't find a job. I can't find a job. And you're like, I found 4.
Yeah, I
found
these
4.
offers.
Day one.
Different. How are
Day
you
one.
different? Tell us about Fawn. What's different about you?
You know what? One of the biggest mistakes I think we make, and parents don't intend to do this, but they are doing it, is that we mold our kids into someone they were never meant to be. The ship or the shape out. It's not like I was a terrible kid. Even when I left home, I've never to this day ever tried a drug. I've never tried a cigarette. I wasn't promiscuous. So it wasn't like I was doing all these things and they needed me to leave because of that. They needed me to leave because I challenged their authority.
And you could not do that
And
at that time.
Not for black parents. You couldn't ask them why. And I did a lot of asking why, and they were fed up with it. But here's the problem is that we raise our kids to then be molded and shaped into someone that they weren't created to be. So most people, I was teaching at Harvard yesterday, and one of the students, she was asking me a question about how she gets ahead in a certain space with AI involved and all the rest of that. And if AI can write great brand stories for everyone, how does she differentiate herself? I said, here's the thing. AI can write these brand stories, but what makes them effective is a person that's authentic. Mm-hmm. And most people show up as representatives of themselves. So we can look at all the people that we know, and we could probably narrow it down to 1% of the people we know who show up as themselves,
right,
instead of a representative of themselves. And so for me, the greatest blessing when I walked into the room, even when I was 18 years old at Covenant House, walked into a place to get a job, what they were picking up was confidence. But it wasn't confidence in my knowledge. It wasn't confidence in what I was doing. It was confidence in my authenticity.
Unique ability.
My
Everyone's
unique
got one.
ability,
Yeah.
everybody. And I leaned into mine. So no, I didn't have the formal education of other people that were out there getting jobs, but I knew who I was.
Is this why you said, and this I was like, what? That was really, you told Forbes when they asked you what you want your legacy to be,
I don't
you said
care.
you don't care.
I still don't, I literally don't care. I think that so many people live their lives for their obituary. Literally, they spend their whole lives thinking about what are people going to say after I leave. But I have a freedom that I don't care. So I don't live any aspect of any day of my life thinking about how people will remember me.
You know, I want to talk about some of the other things the other experiences that you had. I feel like that really helped you in building this business because you did start your own business at 18.
Yeah.
PR, marketing, special events.
Yep.
And even in that space, creating your own and doing things that were against the norm of what was done. And so I want you to elaborate on that and then talk about how that actually helped with your whole storytelling as far as Uncle Nearest.
Yeah, I think if we go back to authenticity, any person who is truly authentic to who they are is a great storyteller because we're all born with whatever the stories are that are in our hearts that we experience in life, our worldviews. We get tongue twisted trying to formulate them for other people to embrace or to love or to hear or things of that nature. So from the very early on, I was 18 and I interned for the top black PR firm in LA called Tobin and Associates, and I was interning for Pat Tobin. And she had 2 clients that could not, she just could not get them pressed for no matter what they tried. And I looked at what they were doing, and I'm 18. I'm an intern. But I looked at what they were doing and I was like, yeah, that ain't right. Because this isn't going to work for this. This works for Toyota, who she represented in Lexus, but this doesn't work for this over here. And I said, but here's the thing. We're in LA. There are all these events that celebrities go to. They're in green rooms. Your product is Thomas Blackshear. He's a painter. And you know, Daddy Longlegs, it's a toy. It's all the rest of this stuff. And I said, just outfit these green rooms. They're always terrible.
Right.
So outfit the green rooms so that every angle that an image or a video or press is taken, it's in the image. So now we call that product placement, right?
Right, product placement. I did that as a living for quite some time.
Right. But now people charge for that, right?
Yeah, now people charge.
But at that time, it was like, well, we're going to be in a green room that's blank anyway. Go ahead and fill it up and make it beautiful for us. And so that's how I began, is what we now know as product integration. To me, just made sense.
And just back to your point of Chat GPT, that's not something that that any AI could create,
No.
because there's certain templates that you can follow, but that's why people are necessary.
Yes,
Right? And those two
always.
things working in tandem,
Yes.
where it's something that can help you, but then you can actually formulate it into something more. It can help give you a base.
Yep.
But again, everything is not a plug and play too.
Oh,
and
yeah.
that was something that had never been done.
Yeah.
And they told you if you start your own company,
They
we're
would go
on
with
board.
me.
Yeah.
And I started my own company, and both of them came with me. Both clients came with me. Now, obviously, I'm young, and I wouldn't do that again.
Yep.
Right now. But being young, I was like, wait, you gonna pay me how much money to go do that? Yeah, let's go. Let's go.
Yesterday.
Yeah, yes. And so I did, and I started my own company, and that is the foundation of how I've built Uncle Nearest, because this industry is run by essentially 6 spirit conglomerates that have boxed everybody out. Everybody.
Yeah.
And the way that I've been able to cut through the noise is that taking that PR background from when I was 18, and constantly I've led PR strategy for Uncle Nearest from day one. I've got an amazing PR team, but they execute my vision. They execute my strategy. And what I love about them is they have no ego, because they're like, okay, she's different. She's special. Let's let her do her thing.
Man,
and let's
listen.
support her.
And even the fact that when you first went to go purchase this land,
Yeah.
you did not know where the money was going to come
At
from.
all.
Tell us
And
about
at
the
all.
land.
And I want to
That's
say,
incredible.
when you tell us that story, that is something that people would always advise against when
Right.
it comes to real estate
Yeah.
purchases.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, I think that fundamentally you don't want to put yourself in a position.
Yeah.
This is what we learn.
Right.
Where, how am I going to come up with the money for this?
Yeah.
So tell us your mindset.
Absolutely. And then if you look at the top of the Forbes list, this story I'm about to share there's a different version of it on everybody that's on the Forbes list that is not generational wealth, right? That's not the Walmart family or SC Johnson
Self-made.
family, or if it's self-made, everybody has this same type of story. Elon Musk, who just hangs out at that number one spot. Jeff Bezos has 10 similar stories. But I remember being around Elon at an event, and he was sharing with the group that when he was doing, I believe it was his Series D raise, that if he had not funded on that Friday, every paycheck was bouncing on that Monday. That's normal. So when you're an entrepreneur, or when you're going after a big vision, you're going to have risk, and the risk associated with it may end up with egg on your face. And so you have to figure out, am I going to allow what may happen to keep me from pushing forward? So with the land, when I got to Lynchburg, Tennessee, to learn the story, to do interviews with Nearest's family, and to learn about the history of Jack Daniels and Nearest Greene and all the rest of that stuff, Jack's second eldest descendant, now his eldest, but at the time his second eldest descendant, she said, hey, the farm where Jack grew up, where Nearest was a distiller, yada, 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 it's for sale. 313 acres, where we now know the original Jack Daniel Distillery number 7 is the original home where Jack grew up. Like, so much of the original distillery elements are still there. The water that runs through there, same exact spring water that ran through and what Nearest was putting in. I mean, this is American history. That property was on the market for 15 months. While the folks up at Jack Daniels, God bless them, the marketing department, none of them are still there, so I can say this now. The marketing department was arguing to buy the property. The operation side was saying, but we can't put warehouses there. There's too many rolling hills. And so while they're going back and forth for 15 months, we just slide in and it was like, we'll take that. But Keith and I, my husband Keith, my favorite person in the world, we had literally just lost about $2 million of our own money that we had saved, that we had invested in other founders in another business. And we were literally watching it go down. There was nothing that we could do to prevent it. And we knew we were going to lose a lot of money. By the time we got to Lynchburg, I want to say, if I remember correctly, Keith would have to like get me right on this, but I think we had like less than $20,000 in our bank account. And
how did what? Okay.
Okay,
How
go
did you do this farm?
well, there's a couple of things. I mean, we were still making money. I'm just saying that what we
They
were
just
putting
lost
out
Yeah.
was greater
Yeah.
because every single payroll we were covering. So even though this business was going down, we still were trying to keep it afloat as to not lose everything. Finally, we had to just cut and just go. We can't do it anymore.
Which is such a tough thing to do
Yeah.
emotionally also.
Oh, it's when you know that there's so much loss, but at that point we were still covering the business. So every penny almost that we had was constantly going to pay for this other business that we didn't even own. And I think we owned, I don't know, 30% or something like that, but we were trying to keep it afloat. So I'm positive we had less than 20 grand in our bank, in our savings, everything. I don't remember the exact amount. Now, we had real estate holdings and things like that, but in terms of cash,
Yeah, liquid.
And so when we put in the offer for the property, the property was on the market for 1.4, and someone in the community, white dude who self-proclaimed redneck, who fell in love with us like seconds after seeing us in Lynchburg, started hanging out. He's like, "Hey, I hear you're interested in the Dan Call Farm." I used to work for him. That was my very first job. He only has it that high because he wants to choose who the owners will be. But if you offer it in cash, he'll take a lot less. On the market for 1.4, we offer 9 cash. Now, we had less than $20,000.
Right. We're going to figure
in
this
our bank
out.
account. We're going to figure this out. But we offered it. And this is what I love about God. This is just
Amazing,
how
yeah.
God works. We make the offer. And we're leaving the property, and Keith and I are like, we don't know how this is going to work. We're either going to have egg on our face because we can't come through, or God is going to come through and make a way. And literally the owners, they were really a lot older. They had been there for 40, 50 years, more than 50 years. And so we get a call asking, could they have a 4-month escrow? Yeah.
Because they needed time. They needed
time to move. We're like, okay, God is working
Thank
this
you,
out.
God.
Thank you.
This is it.
Yeah.
And then the next thing they asked for was an earnest deposit, which is normal. And we come from LA. Earnest deposit is like 5% is what you would put down or something like that. I can't remember what. We didn't have 5%. They came back and asked for an earnest deposit of $9,000.
You were like,
That was divine
We have it
intervention
and then
all the way
some.
through.
It's like, we got that. We got that part. We can do this. And then in order to do it, we literally sold our cars. We just began selling stuff, but we have 4 months to get it done. But there was something in both of us that knew there's something big on the other side of this. We don't know what it is, but there's something big on the other side of it. We knew that maybe it was like this book, and every book makes a different amount of money or whatever. And we're just now, we're still selling as many books a week now as we did when we first came out. But even the deal on this book, I did it where my publisher doesn't have a cut. It's literally like that's a whole other
okay,
that's a whole other topic.
Love and Whiskey is the book, by the way.
Love and Whiskey
on Amazon.
And it's been out since June, and it keeps on making the New York Times bestsellers list.
It falls off, pops right back on.
Right.
And we're not doing anything except for continuing to be out there and sharing the book. But more importantly, people are sharing the book because they're like, there is so much hope in this book.
Yes.
And I wrote it so that it feels like a novel, even though it's completely nonfiction. When people, all they got to do is read 2 pages and they hook till the end.
Yeah, listen, I feel like I could distill some whiskey after reading this book.
I know, exactly.
But it's entertaining, but it also does give you a lot of information.
Yeah.
And, there was some disappointing information in there for me about tequila.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
you doing a tequila takedown.
I'm doing a tequila takedown.
Now,
Listen.
This hurts my heart because I'm not going to lie. I do enjoy my tequila. I
Yes,
was just
she
in
does.
Paris.
Yeah.
I was telling you, they don't really sell tequila
No.
like that. Everywhere I was going, I'm like, you guys don't have. And they have a lot of whiskey, though.
Yeah. And here's the key. Almost all of the tequila that we get here in the U.S., they don't drink it in Mexico. So we've got to ask ourselves, why is the tequila in America almost 100% export? And it's because all of our most popular brands, all the brands that are at the top, have additives. So this is the thing, and this is why I said tequila takedown. is because I had an investor send me a text message last week, and he was asking me specifically about bourbon and the sugar content in it. I said, Uncle Nearest is sugar free. And he's like, wait, but my doctor told me I needed to cut out sugar and I needed to cut out carbs. And so he said I needed to cut out bourbon because it was like eating a Snicker bar. It's like, who the hell?
Wow.
And his doctor told him it was better to have tequila. And I was like,
I've
oh,
always
the
heard that
hell.
too. I've always
The
heard
hell.
that.
And so, but the tequila industry has spent billions of dollars getting us to believe it. And so the tequila takedown that I did, that it went so viral, I can't track it. Like, I think it's so weird that people record my page and put
they
it on.
do.
It's
Listen,
so weird.
When I tell you, when you did the whole take all their money.
That thing was,
that
listen.
went super viral.
Everywhere.
I saw it, but
Yeah.
you know what you're doing, though. I mean, this is honestly the storytelling, but also people buy into you as a person and they trust you.
You radiate.
And
Well,
then
I
you just
do my
radiate
I
the
do my
truth.
homework. I do. So
Research,
even the tequila takedown isn't like I don't like tequila. No, I love tequila. But the fact that I had to spend so much time trying to peel back the layers to figure out when something says 100% blue agave tequila, we'll pay $80 for it because we think that means it's pure. Absolutely not. What it means for most of the brands we're buying, most of the most popular, is they distilled out all the sugar, just like we do with Uncle Nearest. Uncle Nearest is fat-free, carb-free, gluten-free, and sugar-free because it's naturally, we distill out all of the properties. What tequila has been doing is they distill everything out, and then they'll add agave syrup back.
Right.
So, like,
Those
you
are
go
added
to the
in.
grocery
like it
store.
just naturally evolved that way, like people think.
No. So the taste that people love about tequila, they're drinking agave. Literally, they're drinking. You go to a grocery store, you pick up some agave to put in your tea. That's what you're having in your tequila. And so the fact that a doctor would tell someone, don't drink bourbon, but drink tequila, and this dude was drinking Casamigos, that's got sugar on sugar on sugar that's been added, I was like, oh, no, we're taking this down.
And sugar is what gives people a headache.
Absolutely
too.
it
That's-
is.
Yeah, that's why normally when I drink things, a lot of times I try not to mix it with anything.
It's
Yeah.
exactly right.
Yeah.
I tell people all the time,
Maybe a
if
little
you
seltzer.
drink Uncle Nearest, it's like there is nothing in it that is going to give you a headache. But if you add carbonation or if you add sugar, all bets are off because it's no longer the alcohol, it's what you've added to it.
You are such a study in just believing and just following it. Just follow.
Yeah.
Before you go, our audience is full of entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
What are some tips that you have for entrepreneurs? You've talked about your marketing success. You've talked about following your vision, being comfortable with financial
Yeah.
stress, all of
Educating
that.
yourself.
Educating. What are some
Yeah.
real takeaways that you want our audience to have?
If you think you're going to build your company from your savings, you're highly mistaken. Meaning entrepreneurs are so afraid to risk. You have so many that are like, oh my gosh, I'm almost down to the end of my savings. I better go and get a job. And they'll quit what they've been working toward for years because they're afraid of their savings going below a certain place. And I'm like, look, building Uncle Nearest, I've been broke probably 25 times. And by the way, I'll probably be broke 25 more times as I build out the cognac company and the vodka company. But it's a calculated risk. And so for entrepreneurs, if you were told, listen, you got to do this on your savings, don't take out loans, I want you to look at every successful entrepreneur in America. And I promise you that's the opposite of what they did.
Case in point, key to
Yeah.
success, comfortable with uncertainty.
Absolutely.
And another thing, I want to say this too, because I thought this was important as far as leaning into the truth and to the story, right?
Yeah.
Because even with Uncle Nearest, and you talked about how it's, what is it called again? The company that bought it, Brown Foreman,
Yeah.
are kind of trying to erase the real story. And not leaning into the fact of the whole Nearest Greene story and what that brought to the table, because it's not a negative story.
Yeah.
And they could have leaned into it in a positive way.
But they would have had to have done the research.
Right.
So there's most people on face value, you would look at this story as America did. When this story first came out, the headline in the New York Times said Jack Daniels embraces a hidden ingredient, help from a slave. And it's that photo of Jack with George Greene, Nearest his son, next to him. The whole world assumed that Jack was a slave owner. He stole the recipe. He hid the slave.
They changed the picture.
But no. The picture was right.
I thought I was reading that Nearest was moved from the center.
No, what? This is it. Nearest. This isn't Nearest. This is George Greene. He is literally the whole center of the photo. So Jack Daniel is off center. George Greene is who's in the center of the photo.
And we've seen iterations of it with Jack in the center.
Yeah. No, you've never seen it with Jack in the center.
Okay.
Jack has always been off center.
Okay.
It's just when they cropped it, the focal point was Jack, but he's always been off center. And
got you.
And
that's what I was trying to say.
Oh yeah. So the photo itself is the only known photo Jack has ever taken with anybody else during his entire lifetime, and he's surrounded by white dudes that work for him. But the entire photo, the person in the center, is the African American guy, George Greene. So the whole world made the determination this story was negative. I looked at that photo and said, this photo was taken either 19th century or the top of the 20th century. We now know around 1904. If you don't want to give a black man credit, you simply didn't put him in a photo. Like you literally
People don't get that.
Like, right? But here's the thing. Going back to, they could have looked at that photo and came to the same conclusion. But let me tell you why they didn't. They're all white. It took an African American to look at that photo and say, wait a minute, I know our history. We would not be a center of any photograph unless there was an ally in that photo who wanted to make sure we weren't erased. Okay. And in this instance, Jack was that ally. And he understood America is absolutely going to try to erase you. I'm not going to allow it.
That gave me chills. And the family did the same for you. The family, a lot of people don't realize that how supportive the family has been of you.
Oh, so unbelievably supportive.
Yep.
I got so many aunties and cousins and nieces and nephews. And Nearest's family has been unbelievable.
Last thing I want you to touch on, tell us about the Black Business Booster Program and the Nearest Greene Foundation.
Yeah, so Nearest Greene Foundation, before we ever sold a bottle of Uncle Nearest, I told Nearest's descendants, if you get into college, you got a full ride. And so from day one, I have paid for all of his descendants, and there's a lot of them, and to go to
I'm one of them.
Listen, let me tell you, there was a whole subsect of Greene family members or Greenes in Lynchburg that were so highly disappoined to find out they weren't on the family tree of Nearest.
Different
Green.
I'm looking you up because I got a kid in college.
No, I know the whole family tree. Your kid ain't on it.
Are you sure?
But literally no matter. I mean, we've paid for them to get their JDs to go straight
That's
through,
amazing.
and they're doing amazing. And then the Black Business Booster Program, essentially, my company, every person in leadership for my company, we're everybody's bat phone. If you are Black and you are in this business, the likelihood that you have reached into us to get help with your distributor, to get help with connecting on capital, figuring out how to raise money, how to get barrels, how to get bottles, it's a real high likelihood of that. And then every year we gather about 200 of them at Nearest Greene Distillery and do a whole full day workshop as a part of the Nearest and Jack Advancement Initiative. And literally all the gatekeepers in this industry come from behind the gates to come to Nearest Greene Distillery to support all of these Black founders.
I bet that's your favorite part.
It really is.
And listen,
really
and that's
is.
a fact. Shout out to my girl, Ingrid Best, Wine. She
Ingrid.
told me she's been talking
I love her.
to Fawn. And her birthday is also September 5th.
Yes, it is.
Just
She and I share a birthday.
And that's a special day for you.
It
Any
is.
September 5th people.
It is.
But I appreciate all the work you do. I love the fact that you've built this from the beginning when I first met you to see, like, it's just been amazing and a great product as well. And I think it's so important, the story behind a brand. And I think a lot of people I see maybe tried it because of you, at first, and then they hear the story and they try it because of that. But I think, it's a testament to the work that you put in, the research that you've done, the lives that you've touched, and the continuing philanthropy that you keep doing as well. So it's a combination of things.
Thank you, Angela.
Everybody go to Amazon and get Love and Whiskey. Yes. A lot of people out there needed to hear this message today. I know I needed to hear it in here. So Fawn Weaver, We love you. We are so
love
proud of you.
y'all.
Keep shining.
Thank you.
Everybody follow at fawn.weaver on Instagram. Would everybody please just stop what you're doing and follow Wealth Wednesdays on Instagram? So we have our newsletter, we have features, we have free resources at teamwealthwednesdays.com, and you will be featured in all of them. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yes,
I
and take
appreciate
all
you.
their money.
Take
everybody.
all the money.
Take all their money and don't stress. It all works out.
Thank you. Thank you.
Way up.